Hi, it's Tracy. Welcome back. This is a slightly different episode. So last week I popped a community post up saying I was planning on doing a Q&A and please drop in any questions in the comments. And I'm delighted to say I got loads. So I'm really excited about sharing a little bit of behind the scenes with you. You're going to find out about Bertie, how he came into our lives, a little bit more about me, about my career, what I did before I did this channel, about my YouTube journey, about my husband, my houses. I'll be answering all of the questions. Now, I might not get all of them answered in this video, so if I do miss some of them, I'll pop back onto the community post. I don't know where Bertie's going, sorry. He's off somewhere else, he's had enough, he'll be back on there later. And I will answer those questions. So if you've posed one, it will get answered. So let's start with the first question. So several of you asked if I was an interior designer, if I had an architectural background. And I am often asked this. And the answer may not be what you're expecting. No, I don't. I am not an interior designer, as in I have not gone and studied to be an interior designer. I haven't taken any qualifications in it. And I'm not an architect, although I have developed a lot of properties over the years. Everything I do, I am self-taught. So my working career, if you like, my professional career, is not over. It's what I'm doing now, but I started life in publishing. So I was in print and distribution, design, and I worked for newspapers. In fact, I worked for a very large newspaper group, and I did that for several years until the children came along. And then I decided that the corporate world really wasn't for me. I'm not very good at being told what to do. I walk to the beat of my own drum in my design and in life in general. So I decided that I wanted to be a full-time mummy, and whatever I was going to do had to fit in, first and foremost, around the children and my husband's career. Sadly, it was of an age where a man would always earn more than a woman. You could be sat side by side in an office and the man would earn more than the woman. Thankfully, those times are changing, but let's not get political here. So I did various things around the children. I studied, I went back and did some qualifications in marketing and finance. I was writing operational and strategic marketing plans for SMEs. And then I decided, actually, I'm no good behind a desk either. I really need to be active and be creative. And when the sun's out, I want to be outside. So I decided that if I'm not going to generate income, I'm going to save money and build up equity. I decided to get into property developing because it was something I was really interested in. I was interested in renovation per se, you know, of furniture, of houses, of anything. I love breathing life back into old things. The primary residence was my vehicle of choice, and it was for several reasons. Firstly, I could do it at home, all around the children. Secondly, it was tax efficient, because there was no income tax, there was no capital gains tax when you came to sell. Thirdly, it was a great way to build equity. And fourthly, I could do bigger and bigger property. I'm not very good at designing small. I have struggled with that over the past, and the margins aren't there. So I could have bought a property outside of the home and developed that and then sold that on. But by the time you crunch all the numbers on that, depending on market conditions, obviously, there's not always a lot of money to be earned. So I carried on doing that from house to house. So that is pretty much where we got to when this build was finished. And then the whole YouTube journey started. So let's move on to another question. Thank you so much for the questions on YouTube. When I started the channel, why did I start the channel? Why don't I post more frequently? Let me address those. So I bagged the name Rural Refurb, registered the name, if you like, with YouTube back in August 2022. I didn't start posting videos straight away. I just wanted to make sure that I had that name secured because I was using that on Instagram and on TikTok. So I was very active on those other platforms, but they weren't terribly lucrative. So there was brand deals, but you didn't get paid for views as you do on YouTube once you reach that monetization threshold. So it was very much a commercial decision. And also I was getting tired of doing these 7-second, 10-second reels of that whole short form video production. I wanted to connect with an audience on a deeper level. I wanted to be able to show in more detail the different projects that I was doing, the flips, the decorating, the tours. They're really quite hard to do on a platform that was basically at the time just pushing 7-second videos. It was in fact my son that encouraged me to do it. So my youngest, Giles, is 27 now, and he is a professional golfer. So Julie, you asked about my husband being a professional golfer. It's not my husband, it's my son, but he was delighted that you thought he was a professional golfer. He just won a competition at his local golf club and he said, my word does spread fast. So darling, you made his day. Thank you. So yes, Giles, professional golfer, now coaching online, had decided that his time again was going to be better spent on YouTube, particularly for growing his young business. So we decided we'd do it together. Now he was out the blocks really quickly. We started posting at the end of that year. He posted with much more frequency than me. I posted a couple of videos and then Christmas hit. We lost all our broadband for 3 months. I had no internet connection. I got COVID. We had horrendous snowfall and then the heating stopped working. And it was like, when they say things come in threes, this was about a dozen things that happened in a really short period of time. So it really threw me off my step. So I went back to posting regularly in the February time. That's when I started. And then fortunately I was monetized by the May. So it was really, in the great scheme of things, really quite quick. Giles was monetized very quickly in the early February. So it's been lovely having somebody in the house that is a YouTuber. Now, somebody did ask how much help my husband gives me with my filming, with my editing, and the answer is 0. No, he doesn't come anywhere near my YouTube channel. I do absolutely everything myself. So if a comment is answered, it's by me. I do all the filming, I do all the editing, I do everything, the SEOs, the titles, the thumbnails. You know, it's quite a complex, absorbing amount of work to do. But I enjoy it. It means that I can reach out to this great community, have a laugh along the way, although, as I say, it is exhausting. So why am I not posting more often? So to start with, I was posting regularly every week. I eventually settled into a pattern of a Sunday at 2 p.m. and I'm quite happy with that. I think, are you happy with that? Let me know in the comments below. And then after a year or so of doing that, obviously my skill set was building. The complexity of the videos was building, the duration, and it got to a point where I couldn't physically produce a video every single week because it was just taking too long. So the whole editing process can take 2.5 days to edit, voiceover and SEO. If you're then filming, if you're painting, you know, you're at the mercy of the weather, of paint drying. So for what I do at the moment, the duration is, the frequency is going to be every 2 weeks. However, I am hoping that the Christmas decorating, which is the most fun of the year, is going to be every week. So watch out for that. Now I know that if you're watching this video, you are already a great supporter of this channel, and it really makes a huge difference, you know, when you subscribe, you press that thumbs up, you turn on notifications, you share with your friends, you leave your lovely comments. The other way you can help, and how I basically get paid, is if every now and then you could maybe watch a couple of the ads, or just let it run through, let the ads run through, because that's how I get paid. Now, I just wanted to speak to Wendy. You left a lovely comment, Wendy, and in it you were asking about how did I get my start in the business. You've done an interior design course. I would suggest to you that if you're not picking up clients and you know companies aren't hiring, why don't you start a YouTube channel? And you can build a business through that. Just a thought. Next topic, my husband. Yes, he really does exist. No, he's not camera shy. Lena, that was you. Thank you. And no, he's not going to be appearing in any of my videos for the foreseeable future. In fact, he never has done. And the reason being is that he does not have a social media presence. He's a private individual. He has his own career. The property development is very much my career. YouTube is my career. If I need the lawns cutting when I'm about to video, he will happily come out and do that for me. But as we've discussed earlier, he doesn't get involved in any of that side of things. He is I can tell you what he does for a living. He is a director of a very large insurance company, and he's always been in the corporate world and always in insurance. So that's my husband, and that's probably as much as we'll be saying on the matter. Now I've got a lovely question here. How did Bertie end up in your life? Would love to hear the story of Bertie becoming your family member. So do you think we should maybe get him out from under the desk? Bertie, come on, up, 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 up. People want to see you, darling. You have a fan club. Okay. So Bertie is 3. He was 3 last May. And just before the big build started here back in 2018, a few months before that, I'd lost my big old black lab that I absolutely adored called Ollie. And I was devastated. Absolutely. It knocked me for 6 losing him. He was 13 and a half. But it was just, he followed me everywhere. His whole life, he was my constant shadow. So as we were just about to start a huge build, a building site and a puppy are not conducive. So the build happened, and then lockdown happened, and all the doggy prices went crazy, and there was all sorts of crazy breeding going on. So I wanted to make sure that we had a really well-bred dog, because I, like my children and my husband, like my dogs to be well behaved. And I do think the training method for all 3 is the same. Lots of love and attention, clearly outline the boundaries, the minute the step over, withdraw attention. So when I was ready for a new fur baby, I got in touch with a friend of mine who is very big in the equestrian world. She's an international show jumper, and there are always lots of lovely dogs in that world. And as luck would have it, a friend of hers who again was in the equestrian world and trained horses in Edinburgh, who was originally from New York, had a beautiful black lab that was going to be having some puppies. And the father, I hate to use the term bitch and stud, it sounds so aggressive. So anyway, his daddy is an international field champion, so he's from really good stock. Hubby and I went up to Edinburgh, and we saw the puppies. There were 11 in the litter. My husband, who is not naturally a dog person, he wasn't brought up with dogs. We've had family dogs over the years, and he tolerates, he wasn't soft and mushy with them like the kids and I were. He just fell in love. It was miraculous to see. He could literally have just laid there with 11 puppies crawling all over him. We spent a couple of days visiting, choosing, and then finally he came home. And oh my goodness, my husband was just star-crossed lovers, just absolutely totally fell in love. So the training was very much left to me. Bertie went straight onto Instagram, as you do, and in the sink, as you do, Insta-syncy. Got his brand deals very early on. The bed he is now sleeping on, that was part of a brand deal. So yes, he's a doggy influencer. And that's the story of how Bertie came into our lives. And now he is completely in the middle of the family and just says, adore me, which we all duly do. Another question I get asked quite a lot is, how do you get your magazine features? Now, there's a question here from Harry in Scotland. Hi, Harry. And he says, I've seen your beautiful home in magazines, both printed and online. How do these come about, and any tips on how we could get our home featured? Now, we've had 3 printed magazine features and about 6 or 7 online newspapers, online magazines, and then a few random things in Korea and out in Singapore and various things. So in the UK, we started off with Sussex Life, and they'd contacted me via Instagram. I had already written a blurb on the house, on the whole build, because I'd used it for something else. So I pinged that over to them and with a series of photographs, and then they printed that. And then a couple of days later, the Daily Mail got in touch, and then there was the Mirror, the Sun, and various other newspaper groups, and they all basically ran the same story. But, it gave exposure, coverage. I would never read the comments on anything like that because they can be quite brutal. They're not polite like you people are. Now, with regards to printed media, with the magazines, years ago, you used to take some little snapshots, write a covering letter with a bit of a story about your property and post it. Remember, post it to the editor. These days, it can be slightly different. So some magazines won't take submissions from the general public. Others will have online forms, and you really just submit a few certain size PDFs, JPEGs, whatever it is that they're wanting, send those photos in. And if they get in touch, fine. If you don't hear from them, then it's not happening. The most active way, I would say, is that if you've got a lovely home, you've got an interesting backstory, and you really think it is magazine worthy, I would have an Instagram page. And then from there, I would start to look at stylists and photographers whose names are appearing in the magazines that you like, that you would like to appear in, and search for those online, start to follow them, and then DM them and just say that you would like to be considered. Because what tends to happen, sorry, I'm stroking my hair here. What tends to happen is they go one of 2 ways. So they will say, right, send me photographs, send me a brief, and I'll just put that around. Or the way that I did it, I had stylists and photographers who would completely, without any magazine commission, come to my home, spend a whole day doing the shoot. They would take all that away, and then they would start to approach different magazines and they would sell. Now, you as the homeowner, this is a complete vanity project. You do not get paid. Unless you're like an A-list celebrity and you're going for maybe Hello magazine or something like that, then you probably do get paid. But if you're just lowly like me, we don't get paid for it. It is a vanity project. So the best way, I would say, is find a stylist stroke photographer team and see if they are interested in your property, if they think they can make money out of it, if they think it's really magazine worthy. Trust me, they will take a punt, because this is what they spend their days doing. They travel around the country, photographing speculatively. When it comes to the actual brief, you don't necessarily have to write the brief. What tends to happen is you get either interviewed on the actual day when they're doing the shoot, or you get a telephone interview. And with your permission, the call is recorded. Now, some of them go even a step further and they don't write the feature themselves. They then further subcontract that work out to a specialist writer. You will then get the final edit, you will get the final proof. You can make the alterations that you like. If you've got a business, if you've got a social media presence, you can ask for those to be detailed at the end of the article. Ultimately, when an editor commissions that from the photographer and stylist, it's down to them what they put in. I had 2 magazines where they put my rural refurb in, and then I had another one, I don't think it appeared, but then it was in German, so it could well have been hidden away in there. Greta, thank you so much for sending me that magazine. I mentioned this in some videos past. This was the article on the cottage, and Greta actually didn't just send me the magazine. She went out and found a back copy on eBay, because it was some months later, and then found it and sent it to me. So that was really kind of her. What you'll also find as well is that most magazines these days, due to budgets, will not send you a free copy. So you will have to go out and buy the magazine with your house in it. I hope that helps, and good luck. A few videos back, I showed you some pictures of our last property, the property we sold in order to come here and develop this one. And lots of you have called it the castle house, and there's a message here asking, can you tell us about your castle house and other previous houses, your evolution, so to speak? We'd be here a very long time if I went through all of the property, but the last one was really interesting. It had a very interesting backstory. The history of the place was fascinating, and whilst I was there, I did lots of research and found lots of old photographs, pictures, paintings, and everything I bundled up and passed on to the people that bought from us. But just to give a very brief synopsis of it, there was records going back to the 1500s of a small house with a 4-story tower next to it. And there was a definite record of 1610 with a property with a 4-story tower. Now, the building kept changing hands, it kept getting extended, renovated, moved on. And then in the 1800s, Sir John Shelley and Lady Frances Shelley, who was reputedly the lover of the Duke of Wellington, who was a regular visitor at the property, did a massive renovation programme and extended and made it a huge mansion. And this was all in a 3,000-acre estate. So you can imagine the size of this thing. In the 1820s, the Shelleys went off on their grand tour, so they let the house to Sir Robert Peel, who became Prime Minister twice. He was Home Secretary, and he was founder of the Metropolitan Police Force. Eventually, the Shelley line ran out, and it ultimately was left to their daughter, who never married, and she never took up residency there. So in her will, she left it to a German friend who was Count George Herbert Munster of Durnburg. Now, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly for my German friends. That kept going through the German line, and it's reputed that the German royal family were actually at the house when the news first came that the shooting of Archduke Ferdinand in Sarajevo, you know, the whole start of the First World War happened. And this is where the news first came, even before it had reached London. So the German prince who had the property at the time hightailed it back to Germany, obviously, war breaking out. And the UK government, the British government, had, under an act of parliament, seized the property because it was in German ownership. They then put the army in, and it was used as an officer's mess, went and burnt most of it down. So in the 1920s, it was sold off from the government to a developer because the prince, although he'd been granted the right to own the property and come back, he never came back to the UK. So this developer pulled down obviously all the damaged areas, and what was left was the original tower, the original cottage, the stables and the coaching block, and it was that area that ultimately we purchased. And so for my Canadian friends, there is a little bit of history with the house as well. Immediately before D-Day, the Canadian regiments were actually camped under canvas beneath the clock on my driveway. In 1959, Sir Alexander Rowland Smith bought the house. Now, he was knighted for his work at Ford, working on the aero engine, streamlining the production, and these engines were used in the Spitfire and the Hurricane. So for many years when Sir Rowland was there, the clock didn't work. And in 1997, I always remember that because that was the year Giles was born, there was a huge restoration program, and it was actually carried out by the parents of some friends of mine. And they got the clock working again. So I got all the reports from the Horological Society on the work that they'd done, and they presented a paper there. So it was all fascinating. And I kept the clock going, and when we left, it was happily bonging away on the hour, every hour, counting the number of hours. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, bong, 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 bong. That's the way you knew whether or not you had a good night's sleep, by counting the bongs. Okay, let's do some quick fire questions. Right, I'm going to bring the iPad over, glasses on. Well, I am at that age. Oh, that's another thing, age. Sometimes I get asked, how old am I? Well, I never tell, quite frankly, because I think age is just a number other people accuse you of. And I think you can be judged. People see you in a different light when you say how old you are. I'm not bothered how old somebody is. I'm just more interested in what they're doing, what they have to say. So you can ask me all you like, but I am saying nothing. Quick fires, let's go. Right, my lovely Polish friend Magdalena, hello. You've asked a few questions. Who is my favourite designer? I don't have one. My tastes change continuously. I'm always evolving. So I like lots of different designers. I like lots of different design. I may not have it in my home, but I love lots of different designers, and I always respect their work. Do you ever get angry or unpleasant, and how do you deal with it? I tend to get more angry and unpleasant with myself. I think I can't control other people. That's their responsibility, but I can control myself. So I will get frustrated if I'm not focusing well enough, or if jobs are not going how I want them to. And how do I deal with it? I just step away, quite frankly, and I go and distract myself and do something else for a breather and then come back in. Do you ever get negative comments from trolls? And bless you, you have said, I hardly believe that. Do you know what? Sometimes I do, But quite frankly, it's their own time they're wasting because they will get no airtime on my channel. I keep my channel as a positive, happy place. So if someone wants to leave something very negative and very personal, delete, block, end of, move on. That's how I deal with it. Does your family ever doubt your projects? In the very early days, yes, my husband was, why are you doing that? Do we need to do that? Are you sure you want to do that? Now he says nothing. He just trusts the process, which is great for me because I don't have to explain anything. I'm just doing it. And the last one from Magdalena is your funniest, biggest failure in DIY or a project, if any. To start with, I had to think about this because when I'm working on something, I just keep working on it until I'm happy with the finish. So I don't really see when it's not working as a disaster. It's just part of the process. But then I did remember one thing, and I've never fessed up to this, ever. So this is a first, this is an exclusive, don't tell anyone, it's strictly between us. So when we were doing the renovation here, I was the sole decorator. So wherever you see paint, inside or outside, that is me. I didn't hire any decorators. Needless to say, I was absolutely exhausted because I was managing the whole build on my own, running the supplies, running the builders, etc., etc. You get the drift. I was at a stage in the main bedroom, the one with the big vaulted ceiling, and I had a tower up, I had my sprays out, I was using a spray gun, and I was absolutely on my knees, exhausted, but I was on a deadline where other trades were waiting to come in behind me. So I'd gone over a weekend, my job was to spray the whole thing, and I sprayed a lot of product, a lot of paint, and I didn't let it dry properly between coats. So by the Monday morning, it was the emulsion was literally peeling off like wallpaper in this huge room. So did I confess to the 10-15 blokes I had working on site? Did I? Heck. I told them that I thought it was defective paint. They believed me. I had to spend ages pulling the whole thing off, and then where it had stuck, I then had to sand it all so, it could all be resprayed and you wouldn't see any lines. It was a nightmare. But I styled it out. So remember that one. Just say defective paint. You'll get away with it. It works every time. A question from Vicky. What are some future goals and changes with your houses and property? With regards to the houses and the property, I don't really want to extend or renovate any further. I'm always aware of overcapitalizing, and I always believe that you need to leave something for the next owner to do, the next custodian. However, there is decorating that I would like to do. This desk desperately needs a makeover, as does this whole office. And there are a few other areas around the house that I certainly want to go back in and repaint. Whether or not I'll be going in with white or a colour, you'll have to keep on watching to find out. Heather, thank you for your question. How do you deal with overwhelm or decision fatigue if this happens to you? Any suggestions? I know exactly what you mean. My brain is constantly going and it never stops. It's never quiet. I've found over the years that the simplest way to do that is to read a book. A book that's got nothing to do with interior design, decorating, painting or styling. So I've started reading quite a lot just lately. Yeah, definitely pick up a book, and it makes the brain focus on something completely different because you can't read and daydream and wander off with all these thoughts. So that's my tip. Question from Sheila Irwin here on hydrangeas. Now, I did a video last time on hydrangeas. Tracy, can the white hydrangeas from the store be dried out? If so, what colour will they be? Now, when you say that, I'm assuming that you mean the cut hydrangeas that you can buy. I'm assuming you're in America as well, possibly somewhere where it is far too hot to grow them. The store ones, if that's what you mean, I would say no, you can't do those because they will have been cut when they are full of moisture. The secret to drying the hydrangeas is to cut them when they're losing their moisture and they start to have that papery texture. Maggie, hi Maggie, thank you so much for the question. So Maggie asks, has your decorating colour palette changed over the years or stayed consistent? Oh my lordy, it has changed. It's always changing. If you look back on old photographs, I've had bright yellows, oranges, purples, greens. I have been there, come back, got the t-shirt and the return ticket. Yes, it's always changing. Teresa asks, do you think we may see you doing any cooking or baking in the future? I'm very much stay in my lane. So we've got the seasonal decorating, the tours, the makeovers. But I could do some cooking, baking, if that's what you would be interested in. Let me know in the comments below. But maybe say at the end of decorating the kitchen. Maybe with Christmas or with autumn, with fall. So if you want to see the odd recipe or two, just let me know. Sheena in Maxton, NC. How did you get into furniture flipping, repairing? I love thrifting. I have gotten quite a few furniture pieces over the years and I'm ready to do them, only I'm nervous about how to begin. I would say just do it. Just throw yourself in. Pick a piece that is not precious, that's not valuable, that you can practice on. And if it's a mess, well, you can rub it down and start again. Practice makes perfect. How did I get into it? It was a case of necessity because when we started out, we didn't have much money at all. And so that's how I got into it. And of course, in this day and age, we're blessed because we've got YouTube, we've got Google, there's lots of ways to find these skills and techniques. Back in the day, I would hang around decorators and builders at my friends' houses when they were having work done and start picking their brains. I remember an old boy painting the village shop where we lived, and I used to go there with babes in the pram and stand and talk to him about his brushes, about different paints, about different techniques. That's how I learned. I just asked. Diane, hi Diane. Now Diane asks, have you ever considered doing your own line of home goods and linens? Would love to go into a store and see your name on something. Diane from Florida. Auburndale. Have I pronounced that correctly, Diane? I hope so. Yes, I would love to. Absolutely. So I think what we need to do, team, because you need to help me here, is we need to grow this channel to such a size that I can do that. Teresa from Alabama, hello. She asks, I love the furniture that you have on your porch. I just wondered how it holds up. When it rains here, the whole covered porch gets very wet. I get asked this so often. So what I would say is don't ever use anything outside that is precious to you. I kind of run on a cycle here, so I will have things in the house that I adore, then maybe I don't adore them so much, so they may go into other rooms. And then finally, when I go up to the point that I just think, I still like you, but I'm not totally in love with you, then they can go out on the porch because I'm not really bothered ultimately if they get damaged. Having said all of that, we are quite protected here. So the porches do come over quite a lot. We don't get terrible weather. You know, we're a very temperate climate. And of course, if you want to keep your furniture protected, then you need to make sure that you're using the right products, the right exterior products. A lot of things I use, I actually want them to weather down. If I'm using oak, I'd like that to silver down. So I'm not overly concerned about using lots of exterior products to protect. But those would be my tips. Don't use anything precious and use the appropriate products to finish them. Jan from Massachusetts, hello there, and thank you so much for your question. You are such a natural on camera. Oh, gosh, I hope so. I'm wondering if you've ever worked on TV before. No, I haven't, but I'd love the opportunity. Any TV producers out there? I would love a spot on TV. In fact, I would love to pitch an idea whereby I and Bertie, if you've noticed, Bertie has gone off now. He's had enough. He's gone off for a run with Giles. I would love to pitch an idea where Bertie and I travel around the UK or even the world, and we visit really interesting towns and cities and villages that have got a whole backstory to them, and then we visit the charity shops, we buy our goods, and then we come back and we renovate them, we upcycle them, and we style them. Weekly episodes, I think, on that one. What do you think? Would you watch that? Jackie Whitehouse, and she asks, could you show us how you preserve your leaves in wax, please? Love your channel. Thank you so much. I'm so pleased you love the channel. Now, when it comes to the autumn styling, the fall styling, which will start in September, I'm going to be doing things like that. So I'll definitely make sure that I include how to do that. If you're already looking forward to fall decorating, or perhaps you want to get going with it now, you've had enough of the heat where you are, then don't forget there's my whole fall decorating series that I did last year, and you can get ahead of the game and start watching that. So I'm off to go and find Bertie. Thanks so much for tuning in, and don't forget, watch that fall decorating series, and I will see you next time. Take care.